Hello out there, this is Wakeangel2K1 coming at you with a review of a figure that I have coveted for 6 years. It is Mastermind Creations KM06 Stormer, also known as Steampunk Thundercracker. Yes, ever since this was first announced way back in 2012, I'd always wanted one of these things, but you know, they were really expensive, nearly $90. But now, Big Bad Toy Store has them pretty much on clearance, and it went all the way down to $40, less than half of its original price. A lot of them are selling out. It looks like they're just trying to clearance away whatever inventory they have left of these things. But they look freaking amazing. So if you ever had an itch for like a stylized World War I era triplane that turns into a giant robot, then now's your chance. I took my opportunity, and I think you should too. So let's open up this box and see what we got. Taken out of the box, Stormer does look pretty darn cool. Just a quick peek at the stuff he comes with. He has this Cyber Engine Night Morpher, the Rising Storm. It takes place in 1917 and is about Lenin setting up the Communist Revolution. And Stormer goes to Africa and totally eviscerates a warlord that was supposed to give him a bunch of troops to fight. So, yeah. Like, he's not a good guy, but, you know, he fights with honor, and the way that this African warlord used women and children as cannon fodder just didn't jive with him. Then there, on the other side, is the instructions, which not only provide pictures, but also written instructions on how it works, and this thing is so wrong. Okay, so you see here how it's telling you the instructions how to transform the figure's arms first, and then like the last step is transforming the upper body with the wings. This is absolutely backwards because you have to do this part first. If you don't do this part first, then the wings will be in the way and you can't do any of this stuff with the arms. So when you are transforming this toy, remember to do the wings first in the transformation. There's automorph involved, so be careful, but aside from that, if you try to do the arms first, they're going to clash with the wings and you're going to snap something. So really, how could you actually do take the first step of your transformation and put it at the end of the instructions? Like, I'm not gonna get over that. Also, there's this other paper specifically dedicated to warnings about all the fragile points. You could hurt yourself on all the pointy bits, but that's obvious. And then there's lots of places that can be damaged rather easily because the plastic is very thin and the plastic tolerances are rather, you know, brittle is what I'll say. And you know what? Screw you, because I handled this thing so delicately and that did not prevent it from breaking in 2 places. Fortunately, the places aren't completely structural, but yeah. Attempting to remove the hip skirt so I could use it as the sword. Let's zoom in there. And yeah, you see that? Uh-huh. That's where the peg snapped off when I was taking this part off. I think because the toy has actually been in the box for multiple years, those pieces of plastic had warped together, possibly due to temperature changes, and the thing would not let up until this broke off. And fortunately, it's a really tiny piece. You can't really see it from most angles, and it's not going to bother me too much. But yeah, that broke no matter how delicately I tried to handle it. And the fin on the back, this also broke. Yeah. Like, there's so little clearance on this thing when it goes in and out. Like, when I was trying to fold it back in, yeah, down here, yeah, another break. This little C-clip thing that held the tail fin in place, that broke. I couldn't even find where the piece that broke came off, but it definitely broke because when I try to transform it now, this thing keeps on coming unseated. So, fortunately, there's enough of the C-clip left that it still holds in place, but I'm very disappointed in this toy. Like, this originally retailed for almost 90 bucks, and there's plastic that delicate on it. I mean, I could see, like, there's been a lot of things changing in the third-party Transformers market over the years. Back in the day, they were specifically designed to be display pieces and for adult collectors, but that's no license to make your things extremely fragile and delicate. Nowadays, they make these third-party Transformers a little bit more robust, so they can actually, you know, hold up to being used. But yeah, those are my two grievances. Like, that's my grievance. There's a lot of fragile plastic on this thing, and it's a lot more delicate and fiddly than it really should be. But that being said, it is an older third-party toy, so... And plus, the company that makes them don't make them like this anymore. They make their things a little more robust these days. But still, back then, yeah, like it just shows how technology has progressed with these third-party toys. However, he still looks pretty darn awesome. I mean, he basically is he still looks like a Seeker with the wings on the back and the hip skirts and all that. But you know, he's kind of like all propellered up because, you know, early 1900s. So there is, the figure is, of course, very highly articulated. He has a ratcheting waist joint. These hip skirts are, they can go up and they can rotate a bit. So you can move them around so it'll be out of the way so that his legs have plenty of room. They go outwards. If you just make sure that you move his hip skirts out of the way, you can go forwards. Again, if you just move the skirt a bit, they can go backwards as well. So yeah, and he has delicate clickety ratchets. Like, almost everything is ratcheted to some degree. There's very little that relies on actual friction. The thigh joint uses friction, but it has good friction. It doesn't flop around. He has double jointed knees that can go all the way. Look at that. That's really quite cool. And because of when he was made, there is some Mech Alive. When you move the lower knee joint, a gear causes this thing to rotate. Mech Alive, you know, it was a thing in the movie lines for a while, and apparently third parties are trying to emulate it as well. Yeah, you can even put his hip skirts behind him somewhat, so that they actually look more like coattails than hip skirts. That's really cool. The arms have plenty of movement. There's ratcheted shoulder movement in every direction. He has an elbow joint that goes well beyond 90, even without using the second joint that's up here for transformation. And his wrist has a ball joint, that is on a hinge. But the hinge is for transformation, the ball joint is for posability. The head is also on a ball joint. I don't like this. This back panel is the one thing I don't like. It has no click or peg in place, so it kind of keeps on pushing up every time I handle the figure. He can look all the way up. This is for transformation, but it also works great for flying poses. And the ball joint is very free and expressive. Let's get a good zoom in on his face so you can appreciate his stern face sculpt. The camera isn't really picking it up, maybe because the lights aren't bright enough, but he does have some really bright red painted eyes. They're just set really deep in, and there's no light piping, so what you see is what you get. But he has a really cool stern expression, and these little wings on the sides of his head, they can fold back. That's to allow the head to tuck away for transformation, but you know, it's also, if you want a more streamlined look for his head, that's a perfectly valid option. Again, be very, very careful. These are tiny. They are tiny and they are sharp. Stormer is capable of wielding both his wings and his hip skirts as really cool looking swords. Although this is kind of much. I can imagine the propeller spins to actually give him some thrust to swing this massive thing. And it is nice that his weight distribution and the strength of his elbow and shoulder joints are strong enough to support this thing. Unfortunately, I can't say the rest about his wrist. The ball joint, fortunately, the ball joint gets stopped right there, so it doesn't look like it's gonna flop too much. But then the grip on his hand isn't all that strong, so yeah, that kind of happens. So yeah, like you got to be very careful when posing with the giant wing swords, but you have a lot more leeway with the hip swords because they are significantly lighter and easier for him to hold. Otherwise, it's actually pretty impressive how his jointage is tight enough. The ratchet joints have exactly the right click places, and any friction joints have just the right amount of friction so that everything stays more or less in place, which is all well and good, just to show how big that actually is. So he actually is really cool to pose with these swords of his. No problems in getting him to look cool with his weapons. And of course, all 4 of the wings can be combined into this epic giant propeller shuriken. It's pretty epic. Has 2 handles on the inside. It's pretty huge and unwieldy though. It can be used as a shield, but there's really only one thing you can do with it. Of course, having Stormer actually hold this massive weapon looks both awesome and slightly ridiculous. Kind of reminds me a little bit of something out of Gurren Lagann, like this is his version of a Giga Drill Breaker, like super ultra mega wing shuriken attack. Like I can even see with these little colors, yeah, that could totally be a thing. Also, now that I've actually done it, I'm going to take it back apart and probably never assemble it again because it was difficult and terrifying to get it into this form. That's because there's a combination of a lot of force required to get these pegs to go in, and the fact that the plastic feels quite brittle and delicate. So assembling it this way feels exactly like you are going to break it. So now that I've done it, I'm going to take it apart and never do it again. Stormer is actually a pretty tall figure. For comparison, here is Bumblebee. Well, you know, the steampunk Bumblebee I got recently. And as you can see, he's pretty tall, head and shoulders above him. As was previously established, this is roughly deluxe size, which makes this roughly Voyager sized. So, a lot of people like Seekers that are Voyager sized, so this actually jives right in the size scale that a lot of people are used to him being in. So, yeah, if you just want a steampunk Thundercracker Seeker, there you go. Of course, he does have a vehicle mode, which, as has been previously established, you have to transform the wings first. But aside from that, well, you know what? I think I will do the wing transformation right here on camera just to show the automorph. So first, you gotta fold up his ears and tilt his head back like this. Then, both of his wings have to be rotated up together because they have gears, which, as you can see, bring the cockpit up and fold these things on his near his shoulders down. So you have to make sure all that happens together. And this is where, you know, that's where the fin broke. Although it broke going back in, not coming out. All right. Yeah, there's a little bit of futzing you have to do, but yeah, see? Now these parts are flat down. Cool automorph thing. All right, let's do the rest of the transformation on camera. By the way, here on the back of the figure, there's this one tiny spot of like neon green, like for some kind of greeble there. That's the only part in this entire figure where that color appears. And you know, like that's something you can only get out of a third party. That they'd actually break out a whole new color just to paint a tiny little spot. Hasbro would easily have just left that the same gray as everything around it. So, you know, like that's what you get these third party toys for. Like they always go out of their way to get superior paint detailing in. And there is the epic Fokker triplane of stylized train emanation. Yeah, this doesn't actually look like anything that actually existed really, but I'm gonna call it a triplane because that was a thing in the 19-teen years. But yeah, look at this thing. Like it has three propellers, all spin beautifully. It has those really cool Batwing themed wings, like 1, 2, 3 sets. Not much of a tail. I guess I never really seen a plane with this kind of weight distribution, but you know, like it's also a plane that can run on an included train track. So yeah, like you just gotta use your imagination. Like it is a cool looking steampunk vehicle thing. Not really based off of anything that actually existed, but it's still pretty darn impressive looking. I do love this thing. It looks pretty cool. There is just the issue that because of the plastic tolerances and overall wonkiness of the figure, it can be really fiddly to transform, unfortunately. Yes, first of all, like I said, you have to remember the automorph part goes first. Then you transform the arms and the legs. I don't know why they printed the instructions backwards like that. But yeah, really cool looking. Really cool looking little triplane. Like, yeah, I have been very vocal on how my favorite kind of vehicle is a biplane, and how there's only one official biplane transformer, and I'm pretty sure this is the closest thing we ever got to a third-party biplane transformer. So the fact that it turns into something resembling a biplane pretty much meant it was my destiny that I would eventually own this. Oh, and by the way, on the underside, you can see right here are his little train wheels. They fold up so that you can, like, you know, because like a plane would fold its landing gear away to fly. Like, it's so weird. Like the way your hand has to go around it to hold it to fly. That's just funny. But yeah, that's the vehicle mode. So, boop, boop, and boop. It's all on it. Also, it has a hitch on the front. So if you have the Night Morpher Commander or the Annihilator, toys that you can't really get anymore because they were hugely popular and are already sold out, then you would be able to hitch them up. And I believe Night Morpher and Annihilator came with their own tracks, so that you can make track long enough that you can actually make a train. Like, although if you made it a train, then you'd be covering up all of this awesome detailing, so I don't really know why you want to do that. I just want to get one more point of comparison in. Here's little Bumblebee train, which can actually fit underneath this thing's wing. Yeah, that's Bumblebee is a tiny little train, and this is a pretty big biplane thing. Actually, now that I have it, does Bumblebee fit on the track? No, he does not. Bumblebee isn't even wide enough to fit on this thing's tracks. Maybe that's why Mastermind Creations canceled it, because the scale that they wanted to make Bumblebee as, they couldn't find a way to get his... Like, they would have had to widen his wheelbase to get him to fit in the track, and that might have made him look awkward. So maybe that's why they canceled him, and the mold was picked up by another company. You know, the company that ended up finally making him, and they didn't have to worry about matching the scale because they're a different company. Is that what happened? I don't know. I'm speculating here because all I remember is that years ago I saw prototype images, like pictures and concept art of this Bumblebee transformer, but you know, from Mastermind, and Mastermind ended up not being the ones to make the Bumblebee. So I'm just speculating that they sold the mold or someone else picked up where they left off. I don't know what happened. I don't know the politics of toy companies. I just know how this is. So yeah, let's get back into robot mode for the closing thing. My final verdict is that it's still a pretty darn interesting toy. It has a pretty unique vehicle mode, and wonky plastic tolerances aside, it still works pretty much the way it was ever intended to. Just be exceptionally careful when handling this thing, because 6 years ago, you know, like, that's just the way that third-party transformers were. Nowadays, we make them a bit more robust, but, you know, like, that's just how the collector market was back in the day. So yeah, this has been Wakeangel2K1 with my review of Steampunk Thundercracker, also known as Stormer. And I guess I would give him a recommendation if you really do like biplanes and steampunk stuff. This is Wakeangel2K1 signing off.